Welcome back to another episode of the React Native Radio Podcast. Episode 340, React Native Web versus React Strict DOM, Part 2, with Evan Bacon and James Ide.
Robin, I have 140 of my wife's relatives coming into town between today and, I guess, tomorrow.
Just your wife's relatives?
Yeah.
This isn't even your relatives.
No, just my wife's.
That's a big family.
We have a reunion happening. So
where are you all even like fitting?
There's like this camp kind of north of here that apparently there's plenty of cabins, like enough to like we pretty much like rented the whole thing.
Take over the whole place.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Pretty sure if you got my family reunion together, we'd fit like in like one house.
Technically, mine did too.
Okay, that house had how many bedrooms?
I don't know. It was
like 20.
I think it was owned by like a Mormon family or something, and then they Airbnb'd it down in Lake Oswego. That was pretty good. That was in January.
But you could say you fit your whole family in one house.
Yeah, and there were 43 of us. So that was that was my mom and dad, my 8 siblings.
That was just your like immediate family and
that's right.
Their kids.
My mom and dad, my 8 siblings and their families. But this one, my wife is the youngest. So I'm the second oldest of 9 kids, and my wife is the youngest of 12 kids. And so, yeah, it just gets
exponentially bigger.
That's right. Yeah. Luckily, I get along with pretty much everybody on her side. They're pretty cool people.
Well, and if you don't get along with someone, you don't even have to see each other. There's
140 people. I'm sure I won't say hi to many of them, not on purpose. It's just you get lost in the crowd. Should be fun, but it'll be busy around here. But that's not why we're here. We're here to do a podcast. We have a couple of guests. Of course, I'm Jamin. She's Robin, and we have a returning guest, of course. Evan Bacon, welcome back.
Hey,
Evan.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me again.
From Expo. How big are your family reunions?
In the middle of 7 kids.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So
that's
you'd have a few.
Decent size, yeah.
Yeah. And then, James, have you ever been on the podcast? I think.
My first time. Thanks for having me.
I think this is your first time. Well, welcome on.
Yeah. James Ide. Is that's how you say your last name, right?
That's correct.
Okay, awesome. He smiled like that's not a very common thing to get it right. James, how about you? How are your family reunions?
Depends on which side of my family. My mom was one of 9.
Okay. Yeah.
So you know about big families too?
Yeah, you do. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, Evan, of course, works at Expo, legendary within the React Native community, builds all kinds of cool stuff. We'll talk about some of it here. And then James, who's a little more behind the scenes, I think, but just as important, in my opinion, co-founder of Expo, does all kinds of cool stuff. Actually, not as public as maybe Evan and I are about the cool stuff he's working on, but he's always doing cool stuff. Before we get into our topic, let's talk really quickly about our sponsor, which is Infinite Red. Infinite Red is a premier React Native consultancy located fully remote in the US. We have about 30 people. We're actually hiring. I don't know, actually, by the time this comes out, we may be done. We'll see. So we may be a little bigger. I don't know, 32, 33. We'll see. We don't hire very often. And we do React Native consulting, of course. It's all experts. It's all like senior plus, usually staff level engineers across the board. Average is just under 15 years of professional experience. And of course, reach out to us. If you have any React Native project, doesn't matter what it is. If it says React Native, we're interested in talking to you. Go to infinite.red/radio. All right, let's talk about our topic. On the last episode, we talked with Nicholas Gallagher from Meta about React Native Web versus React Strict DOM. And it was a good discussion. We kind of went over the differences between them. Of course, he was the creator of React Native Web and React Strict DOM. And, we just talked about like how Meta uses the two tools and how they see them going forward in the React Native ecosystem. And from talking to Nicholas, it was kind of apparent that he saw React Native Web as being React Native on web. and then React Strict DOM as being React.js web on mobile. It's kind of like two different directions there. I'm going to start with James, and then I'll go to Evan, who I'm pretty sure has an opinion about this. Is that how you think about this as well, the differences between those two libraries?
Yeah, that's absolutely one way to look at it. Like React Native for web was like a very good way to take the APIs that are designed for Android and iOS and then allow you to take that code and run it on web while still rendering real DOM components under the hood. Like the native UI framework of the web is the DOM. The native language of the browser is JavaScript. So it's still React Native. It's just that the native code is JavaScript and the native UI is the DOM. With React Strict DOM, one of the nice things is that we can kind of reduce that level of abstraction by using things like divs and spans more directly. And the question is then, do we want to bring divs and spans as an abstraction to Android and iOS? And of course, the classic answer in software engineering is it depends.
It depends. Yeah.
That's true. That is a good point. Evan, anything to add to that?
Yeah. When I first found React Native, what was really magical about it, like I coming from just like an Objective-C Swift background building apps, was that a few things, right? Like you didn't need auto layout constraints. You could just do flex one and it would like fill the space. Mm-hmm. You could just do like a flat list instead of setting up like a UI table delegate view, this whole like nonsense rigmarole. And then like the animated API was fantastic. So it was just like my ability to express a front end very quickly. Mm-hmm. Like I could just move at a rate that I was never able to with the underlying native platform. And then it just was native views. So it was all these kind of helper views that helped you build more beautiful UIs faster. And React Native Web was very similar, where it came at a time when they were building the Twitter website, or like the Twitter Lite PWA, where there was like all these little styling bugs across different browsers, especially like phone, mobile browsers. And React Native Web had similar, like you could add aspect ratio and you could do all these different styling techniques, which would like normalize. Like Nick Gallagher wrote normalized CSS, which was very popular. I don't know how many developers nowadays know about that, but
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
he didn't mention it.
and so React Native Web was very much like that, but at like the component level. So really, the name of the game with a lot of React Native has been enable really beautiful UI development. And I think over time, some of that, like basically everything else is caught up at this point. So all these Safari bugs have been, mostly ironed out. And then on iOS and Android, they have their own versions of like React basically built in. And so now there's a question of like, are there still styling issues and like how can we improve those? So I think a lot of the need for React Native Web and that abstraction has, basically been upstreamed at this point.
Gotcha. I mean, Expo uses React Native Web, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, Expo uses React Native, and then Expo runs on web. So, like, if you have any React Native code, it's nice that it doesn't just, like, fall over when you run it on web. But, Expo Router, for example, is just, it is a React framework first.
Yeah.
So you can just use any web code in it. And then you can add, React Native on top of it. And then if you run it on web, then it keeps working. So if you had, like div support and CSS support in iOS and Android, then you could just theoretically not use React Native. You would just use those built-in primitives. And it's really less about the div. It's more about the missing styles in div, right? Like there's no like display block in Yoga.
Yeah.
So you can add a div, but then it's display flex and it feels like kind of a rug pull.
What about React Strict DOM? Is that like, is there anything in the Expo ecosystem that's using React Strict DOM currently?
I think there's been a few people who've used it. The StyleX part seems like the trickier part to work with. Just it's got like some bundler magic behind the scenes. But I think I remember the Expo community added the post CSS plugin. So Expo CLI has post CSS support. For those who are not familiar, post CSS is kind of like Babel for CSS. So given a CSS file, you can like transform it into a different kind of file. And so we can use that for StyleX, make it a little bit easier, and then that helps consume the styles. But, overall, I think the real missing piece here is just more native styles, an upstream Yoga and an upstream React Native.
Yeah, Yoga, of course, being the layout system for React Native.
Yeah, we actually were very lucky. The engineer who added Flex Gap to Yoga has joined the Expo team. He's been working on like linear gradient in React Native and radial gradient and background position and back. Like he joined and he had PRs open for like 6 or 7 new style properties just like upstream. So that helps mitigate a lot of the pain. It's like call a view, call it whatever you want. It's really like if those style properties are missing, like ultimately that is what fundamentally defines if a front end framework is good. It's like, can you build beautiful UIs with it?
Yeah. It's funny because before I really was, well, I mean, I was probably like an early teenager and I was like trying to figure out QBasic and stuff. And I knew one programmer, like one guy that could code. And I asked him like, what makes a programming language better? Like, how do you think about this stuff? And he boiled it down to basically what functions are available to you. That's how he looked at it. Like, how many things can you do that are built into the language, or maybe, of course, like the third party ecosystem, like, and like, because the fewer functions there are, at least in his opinion, the more work you had to do to make progress, right? Of course, he was speaking to 13-year-old me, so he was like really dumbing it down for me. But I've always kind of like thought about that over the years. There is some truth to that. Maybe that's a little simplistic, but in some ways, it's kind of true of this as well, because what attributes are available, what styling properties, like not having block layout maybe doesn't cause too much of an issue for us when we're just building mobile apps. But if you want to match to existing like web code, then that's then that can be a little bit problematic. I'm curious actually, James, how you think about this stuff, because a lot of times I've really appreciated how you think kind of like really high level about it. How do you think about when you would choose React Native Web versus React Strict DOM in any particular case?
Yeah. Over time, I would say things would move in the direction of React Strict DOM. And part of this is because the web actually has quite a good implementation of its UI framework, the DOM. And so to be able to use that in a very direct way is quite nice. Like one way to think about this is if you were able to write your UI using divs and spans where appropriate, then that would make the web implementation just work really, really well. Like it would be kind of zero abstraction. And so this is going to sound maybe a little bit counterintuitive, but one of the ways to improve the quality of the web version of a project would be to actually invest energy into the Android and iOS implementations to bring div and span implementations to those platforms so that you could write all of your code using divs and spans where appropriate. I say where appropriate because there are some places like the navigation system, a lot of the stuff that like Expo Router does, where you do not want to write your routing system in divs and spans. Sure, on the web, everything does eventually need to get represented in terms of those components, and literally not divs and spans, but whatever the web provides. But on Android and iOS, we want to use the navigators that are native to those platforms so that you get 100% of the native experience with all the little built-in, Z-index animations and hidden gestures like holding down on the back button to bring up the history. All of that native behavior is something that end users want. So that's why I just say like might not use like divs and spans everywhere, but going back to the original question about like where would you use React Native Strict DOM or React Strict DOM versus React Native Web, I would say like you would typically want to use Strict DOM kind of more moving forward. But I do think that React Native Web is like a good thing that exists today. Like one difference between the two is that React Native Web has more production usage. It's just more mature. And so there is a lot of value in using something that, again, people can actually use today, going back to the earlier topic of like, what can you do with a programming language? Well, you can do things, a lot more things with React Native Web today.
I demand the marquee tag. That's what I want.
And Blink.
And Blink, right.
Well, I have good news for both of you. There.
Oh, great.
The headlining features of Expo SDK 67.
Yes, of course. I think it's
literally headlining. It is a marquee after all.
Yeah, I mean, Nicholas also made it pretty clear that React Strict DOM is Meta's choice going forward as well.
I mean, that's where they're investing.
Yeah, and there's still places obviously for React Native Web, and and whatnot.
I want to get at what our audience is mainly wondering, and like they're all app developers, and they're facing like starting a project, and their PM or their client or whoever wants a like equivalent first class web experience and a first class native experience for both. But they want to use React Native, and they want to be able to use the same developers for all of their platforms. Is it possible, like if you're trying to have a first class experience on both, what do you use? What should you reach for? Can you get a first class native experience using React Strict DOM? Can you get a first class web experience using React Native for web? Do you need to use a combination of both? Like what would you do in that position? Like what would you reach for?
I mean, right now the two stickiest pieces are Expo Router by a long shot for web native parity, and then I'm seeing a lot of just Tailwind usage. Like for a website, you need media queries, you need all these styles, and then on native they just need a fallback. So we are investing a little bit more in CSS parsing. Generally the way some of the Tailwind stuff works is that like you just have a CSS parser that works in React Native, and then you just have Tailwind compiled down to CSS. So whichever CSS library compiles down to CSS works. But we're finding Tailwind just works really well because you can declare the media queries. So those two pieces alleviate a lot of the cross-platform maybe pain. And then after that, it's just a question of like which components you use. I honestly like, for instance, right now you could do npx create expo -e with -html, and that will pull down a project. It uses expo HTML elements, which is like a slightly older version of strict DOM, but essentially the same principle.
Oh, okay.
And you could just type like lowercase div span p whatever, and it will like convert them to views and images and text behind the scenes.
Interesting.
But again, it does kind of break expectations because it is flex by default instead of display block. So if you're building a website that's very text heavy, like a markdown document or something, that's where you start to see like display block, inline block, and even CSS grid. Really, you start to feel the pain. So you add those, then the semantics of like which component tag you use, I think matter very little.
But then you could just switch to Expo DOM components for a document heavy component and just ride with a web view, right?
Yeah, I am actually, DOM components have really grown on me. I really love Expo DOM components.
Yeah.
Like something James was saying earlier, which I really agree with, is that the browser has written a very, very competitively performant version of div. It's going to be harder to write a better version of div anywhere, right? Like the browser's really nailed the performance of like the DOM. And so if you wanted to create a one-to-one div component, it's very likely not going to be more performant than the version in the browser. So that's where you start to fall somewhere in the middle with something like strict DOM, where it's like, it's more performant just by nature of having fewer features and having more limitations. And then if you want one-to-one exact div, that's where you reach for an Expo DOM component. You just literally use a div, you mark it with use DOM. That's probably going to be the most performant version of a div that is the most spec compliant that you can access. So really, we want to just give people that variety.
Yeah, I mean, I see React Native as kind of just orchestrating all these different renderers that you can use. And that's actually a good point, because like I actually wrote down as a question, like at what point are you just re-implementing a browser? And there's this feel like web views are slow, the DOM is slow. There's all these, those types of kind of feelings, and maybe in comparison to the very, very stripped down version of views that we have in React Native, that's true. But just because it's written in native, I mean, a browser's written in native, a lot of them are written in like C++, right? Like they're fast, but and there's a lot of work that's gone into optimizing them, just like you said, Evan. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just the gestures, scrolling, and animations that are like the web can't, like at no point in the development of Expo have we been like, oh, we want to copy the gesture system from the browser or the scrolling system of the browser.
It wasn't designed for that.
Right. Like even if you had a strict DOM div, like overflow auto, like that is not something we are interested in adding. Maybe like the meta is interested in it, but like you can just immediately tell when you scroll something on iOS and it's not that correct scroll bounce and momentum.
Yeah. I'm really glad to hear that Expo's aligned with Meta on this. Because, obviously, I think, it's fair to say that those two companies are probably the most important in the React Native ecosystem. Obviously, there's others that do a lot of really great work as well. But we need to make sure that the two biggest players there are aligned. I'm sure there's small differences in priorities and whatnot that do pop up from time to time. But I think, Meta is clearly investing as much as they can, probably more on the React Strict DOM side. But we probably do still need to maintain React Native Web. Is that something that Expo is going to be kind of helping with, or how's that going to work going forward?
Well, potentially, if we introduce just for example, Expo image, which is like an alternative to React Native image that has web support in it, we maintain that for forever. Yeah, it depends on some of these components. I think I could see us moving to a place where maybe use a div, maybe use a view, something, and that will probably be mostly stable. React Native's view component is very stable, and all the changes that we're seeing land in it recently are just like making it have more parity with React Native Web. Like React Native Web is very far ahead. It has background image, it has all the CSS, keyframe animations and stuff. And so like we see, Nishan is adding a bunch of these CSS properties to React Native upstream, really bringing it to parity with web. And then Software Mansion with Reanimated v4 is adding CSS keyframe animations, some of these transitions. So I think it'll mostly be like fairly stable for a long time. I don't think React Native Web has really changed much at all. And
that's fair.
No,
yeah.
I mean, Nicholas basically said he doesn't he approves PRs if people submit them, but he's not really doing any feature development on it anymore.
Part of the reason for this stability is that the UI components that are exported from React Native haven't changed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, like things like the new architecture have been, the source of more changes, but that doesn't really affect web.
Right. The actual API of components and stuff has been stable.
Fairly stable. And then, of course, the DOM and browser APIs are also, one of the most stable APIs in the world. Maybe not the most, but close to it. So for that reason, I would say React Native Web, it's somewhat evergreen to that nature. And then over time, I'd expect there to be a migration path that is very incremental for a project that is targeting web to be using React Native Web, and then also to introduce more of the divs and spans and ps in a React Strict DOM manner until finally you have kind of 100% of your project moved over.
So it could you can see it being an incremental adoption, and
I think that is the best path if possible. Every developer wants to do an incremental migration, and for a mature app, it's like I can see a lot of companies just saying like they can't afford to break user-facing functionality just for a technical change.
You're gonna have a hard time selling that to a product owner.
Yeah, and stakeholders. Yeah, James, how important is like the web as a target platform to Expo? Because you all have been mobile first. You've been kind of like focused on making sure it's a great iOS and Android experience as much as possible, more than anything. But how do you think about web just in terms of your company?
Yes, it's important for us, and we repeatedly continuously have discussions around how to kind of bring web, up to or beyond the level of Android and iOS. And like I alluded to before, sometimes that means investing actually on the Android and iOS side to bring web APIs to those platforms in order to improve the quality of web. Again, if we can let developers write, where appropriate, code using web-like APIs, then and provide good implementations of those on Android and iOS, then that makes the web implementation just like super straightforward in several ways. And we've been doing this, say, with the Fetch API. That's now on Android and iOS. It has streaming support, which is great for all this LLM stuff that's been coming out in the past couple of years. And then now that allows people to just kind of write Fetch, and it works across Android, iOS, but on web, of course, it uses just the browser's built-in implementation. So we want to do more of that. And then in terms of why we care about web, I would say it's for a couple of reasons. One is that the web is the most successful application platform. It's just where the most users are, and it's simple to look at the say even NPM downloads of React DOM versus React Native, and React DOM is 10x higher. So it's pretty clear that this is a meaningful audience to focus on. And at Expo, our view is it's not web versus native. We believe in web and native. And there are a lot of users, maybe even like everyone listening to this call can relate to this, where you might have the mobile app installed and you want to share a link with a friend, and that friend doesn't have the app installed. You're way more likely to share the link with them if you know that they're going to be able to view that Instagram post or that Reddit post or whatever it might be in their mobile browser or even on the desktop. And then over time, if they repeatedly like Instagram or Reddit or whatnot, then they can go get the mobile app.
Someone needs to tell that to TikTok, because
They just jam you
every
towards it.
time I get sent a TikTok link, they're like, no, you can't view this.
You
like,
need that. You need the
literally,
app.
you try to press play and it takes you to the app store. And I'm like, I don't want the app. I just
And even
want to
people who
watch
have
what my
that,
friend sent me.
sometimes you're just like, I'm happy to stay in the web browser.
Right.
Or you have the app on your phone, but you want to continue your session on your desktop computer, on your laptop, and view the browser there. So like Amazon could be a good example, where you'd want to have both a web version and a mobile version, a native mobile version, and be able to continue your session. And especially on Apple platforms with, I believe Handoff is the name of the feature. It's really great when developers can deploy to all platforms everywhere.
So my follow-up question here is, are you going to use Expo Web or do you already use Expo Web for your Expo like dashboard, your web dashboard?
Yeah, the web dashboard, for historical reasons, it's written with Next.js, and that's generally been working fine. So we just kind of keep
It's
it
not
there.
broken.
We do Dog Food Expo Web for our blog, and have actually kind of embedded that into our main website. So you can see our website is hybrid between Next.js and Expo Web, and we also are using Expo Web for some not yet launched web properties as well.
Ooh,
Interesting.
little teaser there. That's
teaser.
pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. All
Awesome.
new projects are being built with Expo across all platforms.
Yeah.
I love that. And then when you're using your own product, then that's when you are like, oh, this isn't good enough. Like we need to do this. We need to do that. I've had a little taste of that recently, because I started building like React Native macOS, like a rewrite of Reactatron in React Native macOS, because it's in Electron now. And I wanted to follow like the Ignite principles and the Ignite patterns and stuff. And a lot of them are pretty good and, well tested and everything. But there's a few that I'm like, okay, yeah, we need to come back to this and take another look at it, because I don't know, it's not feeling right to me, that sort of thing. So yeah, dog fooding, that's important stuff. Awesome. Well, I know we have more to talk about with this stuff, but we're running out of time here. So I really appreciate you both coming on and talking about this. Of course, you can find both of them online, social media, GitHub, different places like that. And hope to have you on again soon at some point to maybe talk about some of the new stuff you're working on.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks so much for having us.
Great. Robin, do you have a mom joke to take us out of the episode?
Yeah, I do. So this one's from Darren from our jokes channel in Slack. I had to drop my dog at the vet because he ate a bunch of Scrabble tiles. There's been no word yet.
Oh, jeez. Okay, we'll see y'all next time. Bye.
Bye.
As always, thanks to our editor, Todd Worth, our assistant editors, Jed Bartosky and Tyler Williams, our marketing and episode release coordinator, Justin Husky, and our guest coordinator, Mazen Chami. Our producers and hosts are Jamin Holmgren, Robin Hines, and Mazen Chami. Thanks to our sponsor, Infinite Red. Check us out at infinite.red/radio. A special thanks to all of you listening today. Make sure to subscribe to React Native Radio on all the major podcasting platforms.